It's just about having those expectations for them and putting it in context. Right? 12 years, virtually 100% high school graduation rate. It's about expectations. It's about demanding excellence from the kids. And so they read people like Gene Annigan, who's a political economist at school. And then they make their claims, right, about all-out attack on poverty, racial isolation. So what we have the students do is they'll make a claim from the work that they do. We normally have them write 3 to 4 claims. This one, the economic crisis, breakdown of social foundations. Then they got to share evidence. So this particular group did interviews in the community. They also did survey data. So you see some of their data that they're sharing is qualitative interviews, but I'm worried that I may have to choose between going to school and dropping out to get a job. 53% of the students we interviewed, surveyed in Los Angeles said they thought they might have to drop out of school to get a job. Right? We showed these data to the mayor's office, and they about fell out of their chairs. They didn't know. This is serious scholarship with the students. We sampled from different parts of the city. We had a large sample size. We did frequency distribution, and this was one of the ways that they shared these data. We're concerned that about my family's housing, 77% of the students agreed. I'm worried about my family's health insurance, 75% of the students agreed. So there's a bunch of different claims that we make. I took the rest of them out. At the end, we tell the students, Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. So we don't have implications. If you do our research projects, we have demands. Because implication sounds like too soft a term. So what do we demand? What do we demand of ourselves? What do we demand of the power brokers that are listening to us in the audience? Step into our shoes. Understand what it's like to experience school and community life as we do. Because empathy is a key component of solidarity. Right? You have to be able to empathize if you're going to exist in solidarity with someone. And step into our shoes. Understand what it's like to go to school in this place under these conditions, and maybe you will have the sense of urgency that I do to change it. Right? Radical truth telling, when we have to be willing to tell the truth about what's going on. I also tell the students, leave no audience member unchallenged. Know your audience. Everybody should leave your presentation with marching orders. Right? Give them something to do. So we had students, we had teachers, and families, and policymakers in this particular audience, and for students. You have something to do. Learn about what's going on. Become involved. Parents, educate yourself. Right? Encourage others to exercise their vote. They had action plans for community leaders, for teachers, and policymakers. Then they ended with this poem by Langston Hughes. And basically they said, the failure of American society to remedy the inequities in the school is going to destroy the dreams of a generation. We are the generation. And it's very powerful as I read this, kind of line by line, each student at the end they say, or does it explode? But the choice is up to us. Our generation of educators and policymakers and scholars, it's up to us whether or not this generation realizes their dreams or whether their dreams are deferred or even exploded. So, no, I don't have to show. I'll just show it. No, I'll show it. That's good. So how they use hip-hop to be compelling and never clap, never line, the rhythm, make a rap, the give the gap, I'm the twist your cat, from the best of fast, jury worry, you the speech your ass, bits and fragments, so mention with the speech your ass down, while I rip the tracks and spit the backs, hit the grass, green, brown, and purple, I'm the diplomat, rip your raps, you don't get the map.
Youth voice in many ways will shape, our schools.
I've never heard of youth voice. I don't have a youth voice. You tell me what it is. I'll accept that.
If the answer from the decision maker was no, then it makes your voice and your perspective that much more relevant and powerful.
Youth voice, an expression of human spirit that is shown in different forms such as art, words, poetry, and music. Engage in the creation of your own opportunities to speak out to authority, believing in putting our voices into practice so you can be taken seriously.
Right. Goes on, but I just wanted to show, when they show the kids doing their poetry slides, but they have a way of injecting humor into these, right? Although those are politicians, city and state politicians, like but then it's also very serious because then they combat it with their own definition, and they go into theory, and then they go into the whole thing. This last piece I'll share is an activity we did we've done it across the age spectrum, where we asked students to write about a day in their life. This was a particularly dysfunctional class, mostly boys, kids who were in danger of dropping out, put in the class with a first-year teacher. She was going crazy. She asked me to come in, and offer some advice. And I said, well, what do they talk about? When they're really practicing. All they talk about is life. They need to life. They said, why don't we get them to write about it? So we developed this activity called Day in My Life. And I've done it in a lot of ways with a lot of students. Say, take me through a day in your life. And I give them prompts. When do you wake up? What's the first thing you see? We try to get them detail. What do you eat? How do you get to school? What do you see on the way to school? What happens at school? What do you do on the way home? What happens in your neighborhood? And the kids, the first day we did this, they just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. And they said, no one's ever asked us about a day in their life. Then they wanted to do a photo essay. So we got them disposable cameras. They went in their neighborhood, took photos, put it together. Our Windows Movie Maker had a soundtrack and did a movie out of it. I brought them to the university, to lecture at the university. They made their presentations. The second part of the year, they presented to their school. The teacher wanted them to understand how social conditions affect their lived experiences. So out of this original group, it was estimated that maybe 85–90% of these students were going to drop out after the 9th grade. And this is the 4th year of this project, so these students who started 9th grade, all of them who were still in the community, still in school, they're still here. And I already do a lot of testing with this teacher, reaching out to them as 9th graders, and having them write about their lives. Right? We did this in Boston, and the students presented in a reader's theater. So they went around in a circle and were reading, and at the end, about 20 minutes, the headmaster and the assistant headmaster were in tears. And he said, in 25 years of education, I've not seen moments of powerful with young people talking about their lives. And they became empowered to write about that. I'll end. There's a lot of projects, and I tried to just give a snapshot of some of the things that we've been doing with kids, elementary, middle, secondary, over the past 18 years, the ways that we've had them involved. And I think about a couple of quotes. One of my favorite quotes is by Marshall McLuhan. He says, there's absolutely no inevitability as long as there's a willingness to contemplate what is happening. And my dad, who's a historian, says, the only thing inevitable is change. The question is not whether we'll change the world, but how. And I think of one incident I had with my father that was really profound. He attended segregated schools in the South, Louisiana, in the 50s and early 60s. And in 2004, I had an opportunity to speak at the 50th anniversary of Brown. And, he said, I never thought that this would have happened. But I never gave up hope either. Right? Nothing is inevitable. I think about the work we did in the late 80s trying to get companies to divest from South Africa until they banished apartheid. And I wouldn't have thought that could have happened in my lifetime. But within 3 years, we were sitting in a room with Nelson Mandela as he came to the Bay Area. Around the table with this man who was in prison and could have stayed there forever. And it wasn't for young people saying, hey, we need to do something about this. And that's what he said, don't stop now, because I'm not free until we're all free. But there's no inevitability. Right? In 1954, told people that within 15 years, there would be a civil rights movement in the South, in Alabama. And they said, I don't know. Right? Nothing is inevitable. The current state of education is not inevitable. It is not inevitable that poor kids receive a poor education. That's not inevitable. It's not inevitable that there's going to be an achievement gap or educational debt between students predictable by race and class. It's not inevitable. Right? It's not inevitable that the Senate chamber is going to be 95% male. It's not inevitable. Right? How do we change it? Contemplation, being with time, being in time, understanding what's going on, understanding why these things are happening, and understanding the strategies that we can engage in collectively to change them. That's how movements happen. They've always been a small group of committed people to a singular cause that changes the world. And it's always in the interest of power to prevent that from happening. Complacency serves the interest of power. And nothing gets my students more fired up than saying that. You sitting there, acting lazy with your head down, there's people all over that are clapping and cheering because that's one of those kids going to compete with their kids. All right. Get up, sit up, come to class on time, do your homework, do it well, you will do it again because we need you, we love you, you are beautiful, you are brilliant, and the world is counting on you. Someone who hasn't even been born yet is counting on you to be strong and powerful for them. That's what change is. Right? Hopelessness is a dead commodity. Right? There's just no time for it. I always say, You have to be audacious in your hope, even when there doesn't seem to be any common sense reasons for it. Because if we study our history, we know that change is possible. Change is inevitable. The question is, what kind of change are we going to get? The answer is it's up to us. So I thank you for letting me talk today. It's been a real pleasure being here.